Hi, AMSA folks. Welcome to the Princeton Review's webinar, 5 Aspects of an Awesome Applicant. My name is Valerie and I'm part of the Princeton Review's national marketing team. I'll be co-hosting our presentation tonight along with Dr. Anita Pardue. Before we kick off our webinar, let's cover a couple of housekeeping items. Just so you guys know, everyone's lines are muted, so if you have a question or if there's something you'd like to share with us, please use the question box located in your GoToWebinar menu bar. Also, we're going to do our very best to get through everyone's questions tonight, but if we're unable to answer yours, just know that one of our med admissions experts will actually be following up with you after the webinar. Additionally, tonight's session is being recorded, so there's no need to take notes. Each one of you will be receiving a copy of tonight's webinar recording within 48 hours. So sit back, enjoy, and learn some strategies and approaches to conquering the med admissions application. All right, Anita, next slide for me, please. All right, so this is just a fun little slide to show you that we'll be fairly representing the East Coast tonight. Like I said, my name is Valerie and I'm based out of the New York office, and our med admissions expert, Anita Pardue, is based out of North Carolina. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to Anita so she can give you guys a little bit of background on her experience. Take it away, Anita.
Hey guys, welcome to the webinar tonight. So, I know it's the exciting thing because what happened today? This is the day for AMCAS to open for the start of the admission cycle, and just a month from today will be the first day that you could submit. Also, for those looking at ACOMA, so the Texas application system, opening in the next days, and you can submit anytime during the month of May and forward. So it's really, I'm hoping to use this opportunity to really talk to you guys about my experience. What's my experience? Been there, done that. So as you see, I'm an MD, which means I've been exactly where you guys were. I was the hopeful pre-med student who put all my stuff together, waiting on that glorious acceptance letter. I also spent 15 years actually doing pre-admissions counseling and also working with 5 different medical schools doing reviews and counseling. So I've counseled close to 10,000 applicants over my period of time, a lot of you guys. I was the director of health professions advising for an R1D1 university. I have a medical degree. I have a couple of PhDs and a master's in education as well. But the big thing is really being connected in the area to really try to share with you guys what we're looking for. And that's really meant to be the whole purpose of this webinar tonight. So let's just go ahead and jump into that. When we're talking about an awesome applicant, the first thing that leads to mind for most folks is how much stuff have I done? But it's really going to be not about the stuff, but what you do with the stuff and how that stuff changes you. So what I'm going to do is sort of reflect on 5 characteristics and how you want to sort of portray them in your application. So as a part of this whole application process, the first thing you're going to do is get your primary out. And oftentimes there's so much focus on that kids forget the other parts of it. So your primary, your personal statement, your experiences, what gets woven into that is very key and critical because most schools are going to screen on a baseline for GPA and test score, which we'll talk about in a second, but then the other components. But then from there, you're going to then get secondaries. And people often forget the importance of the secondaries and the content for those and what they write in those and then those interviews. And they get so caught up in the interview of just what they're saying and not really an understanding of what they're portraying. So we're going to try to help you figure out what these things are that we're looking for in the application, in the secondaries, and in the interview, and how you reflect those back. Okay, so for all of you guys tuning in, one of the key things to know is that we do have this promo code on our admissions product for our test prep products. So it's the AMSA MCAT. We'll help you get 15% off any MCAT immersion or ultimate class, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on in the broadcast. But before we get started, we really need to figure out some idea of where you guys all stand. So the first thing is we're going to start with a couple of polls to just sort of help me figure out our audience and what we're talking to. So the first question I want you guys to look at is, when are you planning to apply? So if you could just click in on that and give me some idea of when you're planning to apply. So everybody looks like they're this coming cycle. Excellent. Okay, so let me just get a little bit better idea of what we're looking at here. So where you are right now, if you could kind of help me with what's your current total GPA? Ooh, okay, good. All right, so it looks like the folks in our parameters are either at, so what you guys, I'm sure you already know, is that the average admitting GPA to medical school, and this is the average admitting, it's about 3.65 to 3.75, okay? That doesn't mean that if you're lower than that, you're not going to get in, but generally the cutoff for where we look at, where we say you probably need to look at getting some additional coursework, typically grad level work, is if you start to fall below about 3.45, which looks good. It looks like everybody in our group is at and above that, which is great. All right, I got one more. How many of you guys have taken your MCAT already? And if you have, what is your score? And if you haven't taken it, I'm going to look to see if folks are taking it. Okay, so, oh, you are all over the place there. So we haven't taken it in the range. So as you know, you're shooting for that what used to be the 30, which is now about a 508, 509. If you haven't taken it, ideally what we want to see is folks trying to take it and get a score by June. You really do not want to push your first test attempt into July. You can retest into July, but you definitely want to try to get a score in or a test in at least by June. Little rule of thumb so that you guys know. If you have already tested and you're retesting, okay, and you're planning to retest, you can go ahead and submit. Okay, AMCAS will ask, are you planning on taking in the future? So they will be on the lookout for that. If you test before May 15th, okay, the May 15th range, or at May 15th, you want to make sure you have a score before you submit. So like if you, even though we're opening June 1st, and let's say you test on May 19th, you want to wait to get that score back before you submit because you need to be able to say whether or not you're retaking, okay? If you are taking in June and after, then you want to go ahead and submit with the note that you will be testing in the future. I will tell you the test date that's really kind of a sticky wicket is the June 1st date, because the problem with that is, you know, you're going to take it before the application cycle opens and you need to wait for that score to get back, which is going to push you into July to submit. So I always tell people try to err either earlier in May or push it to like the June 15th, 16th date and after. All right? So that's just a little tidbit for you, and I'm happy to answer questions later on. So we are through with our poll time. Let's move on. Talking the talk. Now, what the heck does that actually mean? One of the biggest and most important skills as a physician is how we communicate, okay? And it's really interesting because most of us think the spoken word is the key and most essential part. But Dr. Mohammed actually did a study where he said it's the 70-38-55 rule, with the key part being this 55%. So actually only about what is actually communicated or understood is only about 7% of the spoken word. Okay, much more of that is going to come across in body language and positioning. So if you're thinking about this, one of the things that we always talk about is strong medicine. A strong, effective physician is dependent upon the communication of those ideas and those concepts. So one of the things that I often talk to students about is you can be the greatest physician in the world, okay? But if you can't communicate it and inspire your patient, if you walk into that patient and you just say, you know, here's your medicine, here's what you got, you need to follow these directions. You smoke and you've got heart disease, it's going to kill you. If you scare your patient to death, if you can't communicate, if your patient doesn't feel like they can relate to you, it doesn't matter how great a physician you are, you're going to suck. I mean, sorry to put it lightly, but that's the truth of it, okay? But some of it may not be the greatest physicians, but they have a communication skill that embodies, that elicits trust from someone else. When they walk into a room, if they actually reach out to the patient, they touch them on the shoulder, they speak to them. When they sit down, they lean forward to communicate with them. That inspires in that other person to trust. And I want you to think about it. Think about the things that you do when you communicate. I have oftentimes sat down to do an interview prep with someone, and I did one just the other week, somebody who had gotten in at the last moment for an interview. And we were talking, and literally every 5 words that I would speak to her, she would go, uh-huh, right, right, right. And I'd say, so do you really think what's going, uh-huh, right, right, right. And literally, by the time I stopped communicating with her, all I was doing was counting how many times she said, right, right, right. So I stopped her and tried to correct her, and she goes, you are so correct. Right, right, right. So be aware of idiosyncrasies that you do, the way that you position the body, the way that you talk to people, because that is going to be so key. So how do I get to be a better communicator? And that's in the written word and the spoken word and interpersonal skills. So one of the big things is, take a public speaking class, take a communication-based class, do presentations in what you do. Learn how to engage. This is one of the things, and I know I sound like an old fart over here, but we talk about how today's phone and technology has taken our ability to communicate out. And that's really one of the big things. I mean, put your phone down. Don't text. Talk to someone face-to-face, eye-to-eye, and gain experience through leadership, TAing, tutoring. It's a great way to do this. So oftentimes my students are going, oh yeah, I was a TA and I was a tutor, or I led in all these projects. Well, that's really great that you put that down there. But what'd you learn from it? If any of you guys have worked as a TA or a tutor and you've seen when somebody comes in, you first of all need to pick up on their body language. Are they engaged? Do they care about what you're trying to talk to them about? And if they don't seem to be, how do you switch up how you talk to them to get buy-in? It's the same thing as a leader. If you're doing some project where people just peace out on you, how can you inspire other people to want to be a part of what you're doing on your team? Learn strong communication skills. And when you're writing about these experiences, in your 15 experiences, you need to be reflective on how you learned, what you did, and give an example of it. I see this all the time when we're reading experiences from you guys, and it's like, I learned how to be a more effective communicator. Thank you very much for your politician answer. Tell me how. Tell me how you learned. Give me an example. That is the difference between a lackluster experience and one that catches our eyes in the reviews. All right. So moving from communicating is that you need to be able to inspire trust and credibility. Okay. So what exactly does trust and credibility mean? All right, is the ability to inspire when speaking, writing, and interacting with anyone, but ultimately with your patients, okay? So we talked about this. How can we actually inspire that delivery? I want you guys to think about your lecturers, okay? Think about the lecturer who came in on the first day of class and looks disheveled, or is fidgeting around, or puts the slides up on the screen and reads directly from the slides. Do you really get a feeling of trust or credibility from them versus the person who seems to relate to you, the person who uses imagery, who uses stories, who can teach you something about them? So again, leadership is key here, but it's not about, you can be the president of the Mickey Mouse Club or the president of the U.S. If you can't find a way to inspire people, okay, then you're not going to be an effective leader, but you have to learn by doing. So think about times where, and it doesn't have to be, I was the president of this. Maybe something where you took a leadership role. Maybe you had a project as a group and you took the lead part of that. The other thing is step outside your comfort zone, engage other people. Okay, again, walk in someone else's shoes. And we often talk about this. If there is no way to take on every experience that everybody's ever had. But if you put yourself in different situations where you're forced to do things that you may not be necessarily that you've done over and over again, where you have to learn new skills, where you have to be in a new place, where you are taken outside your comfort zone and you go through it, you become much more empowered. And you think about the first time that you ever took on a TA role or a tutoring role. You were a little uncertain and unsure about yourself, but you gained an experience from doing it right or wrong, and you transformed the way you do it. Another thing that we talk about to help you gain credibility is if you actually get out there and do it. A lot of people talk about shadowing or things they've done. We'll talk a little bit more about that in clinical. But if you've actually rolled up your sleeves and gotten an opportunity to work as a CNA in a nursing home where you're put in an area where working with people where you maybe not always would want to, you're going to get a whole new set of skills that will help you be more credible because you've been through it, you've walked in it. All right, so let's get a poll time and get some aspect to figure out where you guys are and things that you've actually done. So let's talk about leadership. I want to get some sense of where you are. How many leadership positions have any of you guys actually held? Anybody gotten any leadership experience out there? It would help if I actually launched the poll so that you guys could do it. My pointer has disappeared on me. How many, now you can answer me, how many leadership positions have you had that lasted at least 6 months since you started college? Whoa. Okay, that's excellent. So we're looking at an average of about 3 amongst folks. So that's actually really cool. So here's another way to gain a comparison, because if you're listing them on your experiences, or if you're talking about them in your personal statement, or you're talking about them in an interview, think about the differences between those leadership positions. Pick a golden nugget that you learned from each one of them. And then it doesn't have to be some life-altering sort of thing, but maybe some way where you can humbly show a way that you did or improved it or did it better. All right. So let me also figure out where you guys kind of are in terms of your clinical. So with respect to clinical, how many hours of clinical experience have you gained in unpaid shadowing? And by the way, hospital volunteering does not count. And I'm going to touch on that in just a second. So where do you guys stand? Over 100 hours. It's because, you know why? Because that's because you are AMSA people and you are engaged and right. And typically what we say is the threshold of looking for at least 100 hours of unpaid shadowing in 3 to 5 different specialties. One of the things you guys need to understand is it's better to have diversity over quantity. Rather see you've gained exposure in 3 to 5 different areas, including primary care, versus having over 100 hours maybe just in the OR. And that is so that you really have had an opportunity to gain an experience with learning the different types of specialties. So have you guys actually been able to get any paid clinical experience? So where do you stand in terms of paid clinical? Anybody out there gotten any paid clinical? Wow. I got a bunch of studs in this group. Okay, so looking at aspects of maybe doing so at least some paid clinical as a CNA, maybe as a medical scribe. The nice part about medical scribe is there's so many more of those opportunities and you don't actually have to get a certification. The nice thing about CNA is, you know, oftentimes those are typically things where you're like working in a nursing home or a hospital area. You know, I get a lot of students who say to me, but I volunteered as a hospital, you know, candy striper, or I brought magazines or stuff to pay people. That is awesome for getting experience in terms of like relatability, okay? But you're not going to be a stewardess on a plane where you're handing out blankets or whatever, same type of thing in a hospital. When we're talking about getting that shadowing experience, it's really more that contact with the physician and the patient. And what you're trying to get as your take home is, yeah, it's a great sense to see all the cool techniques and everything they do and the stress of their workday. But what you're really trying to hone in is that doctor-person experience, not the doctor-patient, but where you really get an opportunity to see the doctor, the physician, engage the person, the patient as a person. Try to key in on things that impacted that relationship and what were the strong points on that. All right, so moving on. Thinking outside the box. And, you know, as much as we all hate this new MCAT, the whole aspect of this new MCAT and the reason that they put so much weight on the MCAT is really the ability to critically think. Okay, so no person, no problem is exactly the same. We are not clones, and a strong physician must be able to think objectively, critically, and openly. Otherwise, people die. Okay, as college students, we are truly trained to basically learn, regurgitate, throw it back up, move on to the next thing. And as an educator, I know that's what we taught you guys to do. But you must have to take the knowledge and to be able to do something with it. So a physician has to be able to critically think every day. You have to take in the data, you have to form the working diagnosis, and you have to reason and infer and seek out answers. And the MCAT is really structured to really try to push you to think critically, but it's actually how have you been put into those different situations. So it's what you do with the knowledge you have that distinguishes being just a smart physician to being brilliant and then ultimately becoming a great physician. Again, how you take all this information, you use it, and how you apply it. And I know that sounds kind of like, yeah, that's logical sense, but you would be amazed at how strong those skills, especially today with the access that we have, that people really don't learn how to apply it. So when you're thinking about that, how do you actually improve it and how do you get to it? So it is one of the things, and it's one of the reasons that the MCAT has now added the psych-soc component, is taking undergrad courses in humanities and social sciences that push us to think. And I'm sorry, I mean, I'm a scientist, and it's one of the things I struggle with. I loved my humanities courses when I was in college, but I swear to you, I would sit in class and go, oh, I get this is interesting. And I would get to the test and be like, holy crap, was this the same class I was sitting in? Because my brain was not wired to kind of think through that deductive kind of interweaving components. I'm a scientist. I mean, I literally think like a scientist. So it really helped to kind of hone those experiences. The other thing is doing research. So many people think that research is about, we want to see that you guys got published and made some monumental discovery, and that's really wonderful, but research is really more about learning about the concept. It's about how you think about, because in research, it's all about deductive reasoning, how you pull everything together, how you work collaboratively. And surprisingly enough, thinking about spearheading new programs and projects pushes you to think not just about, hey, I want to hold a golf tournament to benefit this child who's got cancer. There's so many other components of that. What are the regulations you have to do? What are the permits you have to do? How do you market it? How do you inspire people? How do you set it up the day? Thinking about to pull everything together for an ultimate outcome will push you to actually think outside the box and to foster those skills. I'm going to share a little story with you guys. Okay, I did that research. I did research as an undergrad. Obviously, I did them for my PhDs, but probably one of my most humbling experiences was getting an opportunity fresh into college as a freshman to get to work in an undergraduate research lab. And I did. I thought I was going to be a stud puppy. I thought I was going to be the person to go out into that lab and I was going to make a difference. I was going to be published. Everybody was going to know me. I was going to be famous. Get to the lab. My job was the lab gopher. I was responsible for cleaning all the cages of our animals and maintaining them and cleaning the glassware, and if I was lucky, I got to see him do the research. So in our particular research lab, we studied snakes, we studied frogs, and we studied largemouth bass. Yes, we studied fish. And I had been taking care of all the animals one day, and my research professor was getting ready to leave, and he said, I need you to do me a favor. I need you to feed Bob over there. You need to feed him 5 frogs. And I was like, okay, I got that. I can feed him frogs. So Bob's swimming in his big aquarium. I go over, I pick up the frogs. I've fed him 1 frog. I've fed him 2 frogs. He's eaten 3 frogs. I'm working on the fourth frog. I've got it over the aquarium. My research professor comes in, screams at me, stop! Scares me to death. I turn around to look at him. I am dangling this frog over the aquarium. If any of you guys fish, it's a largemouth bass, you know what happens next. That fish jumped out of the aquarium to get that frog that I was dangling over him, grabs the frog, grabs my hand, scares me to death. I fling my arm back. I throw this fish all the way across the research lab. He slams into the cabinet, kind of falls off on the floor. Don't worry, Bob lives. Don't get upset. Okay, so we pick Bob up, we put him back in the aquarium. I'm like, what did I do wrong? And he said, those are our research frogs, not our pond frogs. They cost us $2,000 a frog. I had literally just fed this bass $8,000 worth of research fish. So long and short of that, you're like going, where's this? What does this have to do with critical thinking? So for the next 3 days, Bob did not open his mouth. I was pretty certain that I had fractured his jaw. So my research professor comes to me and he goes, okay, clearly the fish is fine and he's alive. Why is this fish not opening his mouth? So he starts looking at the research frogs that we're working on. And he isolated, in our particular lab, happened to be studying Parkinson's disease and Parkinson's tremors. And we were studying some of it was the chemicals that were born within the liver and the pancreas of this particular frog. But what he was looking at, what we discovered is there was a neurotoxin in this fish. in this frog that we had never looked at, had never researched, had never studied. He got to thinking about what was in this frog that probably paralyzed this particular fish. He isolated the neurotoxin, wrote grants, over the next 6 to 10 years, made monumental discoveries in which this neurotoxin is actually used in current Parkinson's disease therapy. Okay, so what was that would be me, the bumbling lab idiot mistake, forced my researcher to think outside the box, look at the way things related. This had nothing to do with our protocol or anything we were doing that led to a monumental discovery by his ability to think outside the box. So what about you guys? Oops, sorry, my apologies. Let's see where you stand in terms of research. Have any of you guys done any research? So let me get your poll up. What research have you done? Any of you guys just done a summer or a semester or a year? Any at all? So a year or more. So a semester to a year, which is excellent, because one of the key things about research is that a summer experience is a great way to gain some exposure to research, but ideally if you want it to be a strong part on your application, a minimum of a semester, ideally a year. If you guys are looking at going into an MD PhD program, we typically want to see a minimum of 2 years in at least 2 different lab areas. All right, so what else we got? Compassion and empathy. Okay, this is kind of a no-brainer. If you're going to be a physician, one would hope that you have levels of compassion and empathy to help you be able to relate. This is where I really need you guys to get real, where you really need to bring your feelings from the gut and realize that it's not just about helping and serving people. And when you go to write your essay, when you go to write your experiences, and when you go to convey this in your interview, you need to feel within your gut why you really want to do this. Not just help, not just serve, but what does helping and serving mean? Okay, sympathy is the ability to relate with oneself, your patients, your colleagues, and your co-workers, regardless of sex, race, class, or creed. That's kind of that definition of where we are, but it's so much more than just service and giving, okay? It's about having real professional compassion for somebody, okay? And the key part is, and we talked about this earlier, medicine is not about you. It's about, can you understand, can you counsel, and can you relate, okay? I remember about a year and a half ago, patient comes into the office who happened to be a close friend. And we actually ironically used to joke about how he was kind of a paranoid sort of guy. He was always worried about everything. He was a neighbor, and at least once a month would call and say, I think my blood pressure's up. I think my heart's beating fast. So he gained a little weight. One of the things that we had suggested was that he lose some of that weight. And so he'd taken up running, and he came into the office with complaints of hip pain. So what we were thinking was, he'd probably not stretched appropriately, or he'd overstretched, probably had some hip pain related to that, but he wanted to come in and just check it out. So to just sort of kind of appease him, said, we're going to send him for an x-ray. So a little over an hour later, the x-rays came back. So what had been and started out the day as joking about, running and not stretching or not being flexible, they need to take some ballet lessons or whatever, staring at that x-ray, and it sounds like that Tim McGraw sign, that everything flashed by, because looking at that x-ray, what we saw were that his hips were completely filled with bone mets. So he had an unknown cancer that we hadn't even known about, that just incidentally was picked up. So you went from going with a close friend who you thought you were just, and your whole day changes, your whole life changes. And you're looking at this person, and you have to look them in the face and realize that you're going to have to share the fact with him that he's probably not going to live very long. And as it turned out, he did have metastatic disease. Both of his daughters were getting married that particular summer. Everything got expedited up to try to deal with him. But then watching this patient face death with dignity that no one could relate to sit with him the night before he died with the hospice nurse at his side as she told the entire family that it would probably just be a matter of days, and have him look at every one of us and say, I'm okay, I'm at peace, I'm ready to go. And understanding the courage of what it took and where he was, to be able to understand and relate to those patients can be such a key part of understanding what compassion is about. And the moment that you can step out of the aspect of thinking that being a physician is all about you, and that it's about the patients and the people, and embracing the fact that you have the best career in the world because that's what you're getting to do. You're getting to work with people who share their lives with you every day, the better physician that you will be. And we shared with that earlier about communication, about the physician who comes in and goes, you got diabetes, you're going to die if you don't do things right. And they shut it down, versus sitting down with them and talking to them. Do people get it? Are you clueless, or can you help people relate? So how do you become more compassionate and empathetic? First of all, it's not, you can't bottle it up, okay? The things you can do are to put yourself in real life experiences, okay? I know most of you guys want to go right in. I want to apply right now. I mean, y'all are all like hamsters on a treadmill, going through high school, going through college, taking that additional time. But taking a gap year has actually become very much the thing that medical schools look for, because we want to see somebody who hasn't only just been through school and gotten good grades, but they've taken time to learn what the real world's about having a job, about paying their bills, about working with other people where that job means the difference between whether or not they eat that night. Other things you could do: go abroad, put yourself in different cultural situations, take mission trips, join the Peace Corps, do Service America. Dedicate time and service in less glamorous areas, okay, like working in hospice, like my friend who I sat beside and watched him in his moment of dignity where it was stronger than I could ever imagine being. And become that CNA in that nursing home where you think, I'm not really sure I really want to do those things. Put yourself in those situations and understand what life's about. Go in and visit with that stroke patient who in a matter of minutes had his whole life changed, and listen to how lonely he is as he sits in that bed, never able to do the things that he used to do. Or maybe the loneliness of the family members who don't come to see him anymore, or the fear of what means at the end of that life. Educate yourself about how life is outside of the little bubble that you know, and you will be able to write it and read it and share it in your interviews and every part of your application. All right. Poll time again. So when we're thinking about service and the service things you do, how many of you guys, based on what we've seen, but how many of you guys have participated in some type of service more than 2 times for over a 6-month span? Okay. So when we're talking about service, I'm going to tell you that service is probably one of the biggest, most important things we look for. So let's think about one other aspect of it. How many of you guys have done a study abroad or an international mission trip? And you can select any number of these. So summer study abroad, excellent, great way to get that experience. Any other aspects out there? Okay, semesters abroad, excellent. And international mission trips, good to see. Okay, all of these things are really important. And it's not about hitting the check boxes. It's about understanding those aspects. So when you think about volunteering with hospice, something that you do on a regular basis, something that you do when you're actually out there and you're sitting on the other side looking at the family members of the hospice member of the patient who's about to pass. If you're maybe an excellent thing, think about becoming a mentor with Big Brother, Big Sister, or Boys and Girls Club. Okay, you can be an example for those kids, but those kids will probably teach you more than you will ever realize. Service is about how you grow through what you do. And the last is resilience, okay? You know, and a lot of times I get students who come to me and they go, but I haven't had some earth-shattering sort of thing happen to me. I haven't, I haven't battled cancer. I haven't lost both of my parents, okay? And I'm not asking you to come about some monumental thing. It can be so subtle that how you grow, how you change, we've all had adversity, but what's the difference is how you survive the adversity, how you come out on the other side. And if any of you guys have been watching the NFL draft, it was interesting because one of the commentators said that the other day. Everybody has adversity. And for us, reading personal statements, I hear this all the time. I hear kids who go, my grandma died, and I wanted to be a doctor so I can help. So, it's whatever killed my grandma or whatever killed this person. Everybody's had some adversity, okay? And we hear it all the time. It's how you changed, how you grew, and what you did through the adversity that you overcame and came out on the other side, okay? So, same thing. How do you develop resilience, and how do you reference that? How can you show that on the other side? And one is actually taking that time, taking some time out that does something different, okay? Take up a hobby, get real world experience outside that comfort zone. If you've ever been fired from a job, okay, even I know as cliche as it sounds, but having your heart broken, okay, running for a position that you put your heart and soul into that you didn't get, aspiring to really do something that you lost, being the captain on a team that basically sucked for a year, overcoming adversity and how you use those skills to better come out on the other side, because you'll be able to share them with your patients. You'll be able to share them and help you grow, and they will help you become a stronger person through everything you do. So when you guys are doing your application, when you're writing your personal statement, and by the way, at the end of this month, on May 31st, I'm actually going to have a webinar about writing your personal statement. And as you know, we'll be having another webinar later this month to kind of talk about sort of the oh no you didn't. Okay, that will curl your hair and you'll go, oh, I never would have done those things. We're going to be talking about the most common mistakes. You guys clearly have already put in the things to have the grades, the test score, and all the things that make your application look good, but so is everybody else submitting your application. Don't make a silly, stupid mistake that will get you weeded out. Don't wait or delay. Don't write the wrong things the wrong way, and don't be the one who is not reflective on these points. Show us you can communicate. Show us that you have an understanding and you have empathy. Show us that you have compassion. Show us that you have an understanding of what it really means to be a physician, not just I want to help and serve people. Okay? So where do we go from here? Your job, our job, is to help you figure out how to get into your dream med school. And that's actually one of the coolest things for me about working with Princeton Review, because we actually can help you from any aspect. Because we've already talked about, you got to have the grades, you got to bring the test score, and you got to be able to put the application together. Okay, so the resources are, you can log on with us and take a free practice test and actually get it and analyzed for what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, and how can we target. Just mentioned our free webinars. We've got one the end of this month on crafting your best personal statement. We're going to talk just a second about ways to improve your GPA. We've got tutoring services that can help you when you need it the most. Okay, and we can help you prepare and get your application ready and get it out the door. Okay, so again, remember, don't forget, 15% off if you any MCAT prep class if you use the AMSA MCAT prep code, promo code. AMSA MCAT is your promo code. So stuck on, I don't know about you guys, but oh, how I hated organic chemistry. Oh, how I hated physics. I mean, for me, if I could compute it together, I was good. Biology, I was golden. Organic literally looked to me like a bunch of Legos hooked together. Physics, if there was a monkey in the tree and I shot him out of the tree, with what velocity did he hit the ground? I do not care. Monkey is dead. All right. But you're stuck on it. And when are we typically doing our homework? We're not typically doing our homework right after class when we can ask the professor. We're doing homework at 12 o'clock at night. We're doing homework, and then you get stuck. You can't call your professor. We have amazing tutoring services, and if right now, if you go to princetonreview.com/betterGPA, you can get a 60-minute free trial with tutoring. It's open 24 hours a day. You log on, you can get a tutor to you in less than a minute. And when you're trying to figure out with what velocity that monkey hit the ground, could be important for your test day the next day. The other thing that we've actually started, we're rolling out this week a brand new MCAT strategy course. This is really targeted for people just like you guys who have gotten all your materials together, you got your prereqs together, and you're ready to study. But if you're looking at our typical ultimate class or whatever, long hours, multiple weeks in the classroom, and you're going, but I'd like to look at all that stuff online. I want to look at that on my own time. I don't want to do live online. I don't want to sit in the seat. I need to learn the strategies, okay? I've got the content. Teach me how to answer these questions. And that honestly is 70% of the battle. And it's focused for prep students who can master the content through looking at the videos and stuff. And you have access to all of the materials, all the video, but it is 44 hours of live instruction directly with a team of our typical experts, our 4 to 6 experts, to show you exactly how to target and answer those questions. Awesome class, really totally strategy based. Okay, last comes me. I am the MCAT, I am the med school admissions counseling. I'm the one who can help you get the personal statement, get the 15 experiences written in the way that it will catch the attention when it comes to us to review it on the med school side of things. Help you stand out. We talk about, I know you've done all these great things. I know that you put all this together, but I liken it. We talk about special snowflake syndrome. I'm sure you guys have heard it, where you think you should be a special snowflake because you've done everything, but you are a snowflake in a blizzard out there. How do you make your snowflake sparkle? And this is what we did. I know it sounds so stupid, but it's how you present it, how you write it. Does your personal statement catch my attention, or does it bore me to tears? Is it just like everything else? Do your 15 experiences. I can get my kids to read emails, and you think that we're pouring through all of that. How do you write your experiences so they stand out? How do you write your secondaries so they are meaningful and what we're looking for? And most importantly, when you get to that interview, how do you kill it when you come out of there so they remember you? And that's really what I'm trained to help you guys figure out, along with the best schools to help you get there. All right, one last poll so we can kind of feed on where we go from here. And that's basically to figure out kind of all of the information, and your answers were captured here. We can give you some reflective responses about where you stand. But basically, if you could give me some information about, if you want to know about how you scored and how healthy your application is, if you want any information about our MCAT prep classes, or if you want information about how to boost your GPA, what our tutoring services actually do, just check one of the boxes. Where's my arrows? Gone again. Here we go. Check one of the boxes here about how you scored on your application and how we can help on for our survey poll, how you can best prep for the MCAT, and if you have any interest on our tutorial. And you can check any or all of those. All right? We'll leave this information up here so you can write this down and where you can get to us, information about AMSA. But I think the bigger thing is to know, do you guys have any questions that I can answer right here? Otherwise, I'm going to let you go. But I'd like to answer any questions you might specifically have since we're opening day. So I'm going to turn it back over to Valerie.
All right. Thanks so much, Anita, for sharing all of that valuable information. So it does look like we have a couple of questions from our attendees. So the first question we received was, what counts as paid clinic? Does home care work?
So if you are doing home care and home aid, yes, it does. Okay. Again, what you're trying to get out of it is an understanding of the things that the patients are going through, the relatability of what families are going through. And this can be oftentimes if you're have tech or something like that, yes, that can count. What really doesn't count is a lot of times I will have people who are say, I'm a clinical research associate. If that is strictly on the non-patient side, it doesn't count. If it's on the patient side, it does. All right, Valerie?
All right, awesome. Another question we received was, also, can we use clinical shadowing hours from high school?
Oh, this is a tough one. Typically, and unfortunately, when we're talking about the AMCAS application, they do not want anything that started in high school that was the summer before you started your freshman year, unless it started in high school but continued into college. If it continued into college, you can list the start date within high school. If it was only in high school, it is strongly discouraged to be listed on your application. However, even though you can't list it in your experiences, you can use it on your secondaries. So if it's a reflective question or an experience, you can use it on a secondary. Next question.
All right, thanks so much. All right, so our last question is, if you haven't shadowed in multiple specialties but worked in multiple areas of medicine, is that all right?
Okay, worked in. So are we referring maybe to paid clinical? And if that is, so oftentimes I will have people who were MAs or nurses or pharmacists and they worked in multiple areas or disciplines. Yes, that will work. Again, the take home for all of this is we're trying to see that you've gained an understanding of the different opportunities out there, the different fields, and the different ways they interact. So, and that's the hard part about it. We really look at an applicant who says, I want to be a physician. I've often seen people who will spend more time looking at and trying on different types of shoes than they will invest in a career they're going to spend the rest of their life doing. And that's actually how it looks to us on the other side. If you've applied and you got all this stuff and you've got maybe 5 hours of shadowing one physician, we really look at that and go, how do you really know what medicine is all about? So if it's not a lot of diversity of shadowing, but you've worked in different areas, maybe through a career, maybe different contact aspects of what you've done, yes, that can count.
All right, good stuff, Anita. Okay,
All right.
so it looks like we got one more question,
Okay.
AMCAS related. So this attendee wrote, if I accidentally started entering information into the 2017 AMCAS application but am not applying until 2018, will there be a problem?
Okay, so you opened your application early in 2017, like before today, and you started keying things in. And what that means is all that information is in last year's system. Okay, so you've already got an AMCAS ID, but you will have to re-enter into the 2018. Where it would be a problem is if you actually hit the submit button. Okay, so if you enter and you never hit submit, so like you were just working on it, you're fine. Okay, if you submitted it, it would be an issue because it looks like you submitted and you didn't apply. And you just really just need to address that information in your secondary. So, and almost every secondary has a question that says, hey, is there anything you want to tell us? And that would be, you know, I accidentally didn't realize the application cycle had not opened. But you will need to re-enter everything because all the old information is wiped and what started today is fresh and new. But it won't be a problem if you didn't submit.
All right, thanks so much, Anita. So it looks like that's it for questions. But if you guys happen to think of any other questions after tonight's webinar, feel free to drop us a line at questions@review.com. All right, and just as a reminder, just so you guys know, you'll all be receiving an email with a link to tonight's webinar recording. And in case you haven't already registered, like Anita mentioned, she will be hosting another AMSA member exclusive webinar on May 15th. To sign up for that, visit princetonreview.com/AMSA for more information. Also, if you have any other friends of yours who are AMSA members, feel free to pass along this link. And that's it. Once again, thank you, Anita, so much for sharing all of your admissions wisdom with us tonight. And thank you to all of our attendees for joining us. Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.